lawyer, like in the case of Joseph Zieler, a double murder suspect in Cape Coral, Florida. Back in May 1990, 11-year-old Robin Cornell and her babysitter Lisa Story were found assaulted and murdered at their home. The gruesome scene was discovered by Robin's mom, Jan Cornell, who called 911. The case went cold for over 2 decades, until Zieler was arrested in 2016 for shooting and injuring his son. His DNA was collected and entered into the database, which matched the DNA evidence from the 1990 crime scene.
Now, Joseph Zieler was actually arrested for another crime, and that's how detectives were able to get his fingerprints and DNA samples. His sample was put into a database called CODIS, and that database also stores unknown DNA samples, including those from the Cornell Story case. Now, when the system ran, that's when detectives got a hit linking Zieler to this 26-year-old murder case.
Zieler was further arrested and charged with capital murder. In court, prosecutors sought the death penalty.
The kind of factors which makes what the defendant did to Robin Cornell and Lisa Story so grave, so serious, that death is the appropriate recommendation, that death is the appropriate sentence.
Zieler then took the stands. He initially denied knowing both the victims and Jan.
Do you know Jan Cornell?
No, I don't know Jan Cornell.
Do you know Lisa Story?
No,
Do you know Robin Cornell?
no.
But later said his DNA was at the crime scene because he and Jan were involved in intimate acts the night before the murders.
And what I believe happened is I slept with Jan Cornell and Leanne Deller, and they were just too much of a pig not to wash your sheets.
He even called the victim's mother a pig.
Your DNA would have still been there 5 months later.
Yes,
And that's because they're pigs and they don't wash their sheets, right?
exactly.
You know that?
Well, I assume that, just like you're assuming that
But just so the record's clear, when I said they're pigs and they wash their sheets, that's what you said.
absolutely.
Zieler then claimed that the prosecutor was framing him.
Well, the DNA witnesses, did you hear them say that they actually did retest NB32, that they actually took the sheet, recut another sample, and had another analyst do the same test? Did you hear that?
Yes.
So the retesting was done.
I believe FDLE is siding with the prosecution. Of course they're going to say that.
Eventually, the jury found Zieler guilty of first-degree murder.
Verdict. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 1 of the charge. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder of Robin Cornell. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 2 of the charge. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder of Lisa Story.
But what Zieler did next left the whole courtroom stunned. At his sentencing, Zieler appeared in handcuffs. First, he asked his attorney for a private discussion.
What's that?
As the attorney leaned in, Zieler threw a cheap shot with his elbow. Thankfully, detectives quickly subdued him. Meanwhile, the lawyer saw the funny side of the incident.
I used to box. I've taken a lot better shots than that.
After the dust settled, it was time for Zieler to learn his fate.
The court's review of other capital cases has led the court to conclude that the death penalty would be a proportionate sentence in this case. Therefore, the court concludes that under the laws of the state of Florida, the defendant has forfeited his right to live.
He was sentenced to the death penalty.
Accordingly, it is ordered and adjudged that the defendant, Joseph Adam Zieler, is hereby sentenced to death for the murder.
This is Deobra Redden, who's facing charges for attempted battery in Nevada. 30-year-old Redden was arrested after he allegedly attacked a man with a baseball bat. He pleaded guilty and faced a possible sentence of 1 to 4 years in prison. At his sentencing, Redden had a calm and matter-of-fact exchange with Clark County District Judge Mary Kay Holthus.
Based on my criminal history, like I feel that like I shouldn't be like sent to prison for a second time.
Have you looked at your criminal history? Have you looked at your criminal history?
Actually just I look at it.
I mean, you lived it, I
I
suppose.
just looked at it, yeah.
Yeah.
Judge Holthus then reminded Redden of his criminal history.
And, you know,
3 felonies, a gross, 9 misdemeanors, multiple DVs. Got a lot going on, sir.
yeah, I just feel like
Battery on a protected person, robberies, attempt home invasion.
Redden, who struggled with mental health issues like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, tried to convince the judge that he deserved a second chance.
I feel like I shouldn't be sent to prison, but if it's appropriate for you, then you have to do what you have to do. But I figure that, you know, if I'm in a better place in my life, I'm not doing drugs, I'm not out there committing crimes now, and I feel like I should be given a shot because I'm in a better place than I was.
But Judge Holthus was having none of it.
I appreciate that, but I think it's time that he gets a taste of something else because I just can't with that history.
This is when things got crazy. Redden launched over the courtroom bench and headed straight for Judge Holthus. Eventually, deputies were able to restrain him. As alarms went off in the courtroom, people started to call for help.
Affirmative medical is requested. Judge's chambers.
Yeah, be advised. 515's got a big laceration to his head. Judge hit her head into the wall, and I got an inmate that's bleeding up here.
It's going to be a positive transport to UMC for a marshal.
Be advised, I'm also going to need a biohazard cleanup for a lot.
That moment when Deobra Redden leaped over the bench, it's chilling. You can feel the courtroom shock, the raw chaos. His mental health struggles don't excuse this, but they paint a tragic picture of someone spiraling. How does a system handle someone so volatile? It's not just about punishment. It's about understanding the breaking point. Judge Huss stood firm, but at what cost? This isn't just a courtroom clip. It's a glimpse into a broken mind and a system stretched thin.
In court again, heavily shackled and wearing a spit mask for the sentencing of his initial assault case.
Good morning. All right, this is on for the continuation of Mr. Redden's sentencing. For purposes of the record, I want to make it clear that I am not changing or modifying the sentence I was in the process of imposing last week before I was interrupted by defendant's actions. All right, that being said, in accordance with the laws of the state of Nevada, this court does now sentence you in addition to the $25 administrative assessment fee, $150 DNA fee, the $3 DNA administrative assessment fee, and $250 indigent defense fee, 19 to 48 months in the Nevada Department of Corrections.
Additionally, he faced 13 new charges for the attack on Judge Holthus, including attempted murder, battery, and extortion by threat. If convicted, Redden could spend decades can do better, like in the case of Melissa Hardwick, who was in Russell and Wayne County Family Court in Kentucky for a domestic violence hearing. Melissa's ex-husband had filed a domestic violence order against her.
Your statements in your petition as part of your testimony, but I need you to tell me briefly, in your own words, what happened to cause you to ask for a domestic violence order.
Yes, Your Honor. Things have been escalating, I guess, since the first of the year, and Melissa's had a couple MIWs and a couple arrests, and she got out of jail in, I guess, April, and she started, we hadn't really had anything personal up until that point. She got out of jail in April.
He was explaining the situation when suddenly Melissa erupted.
My personal life is your business. It has nothing to do with
Miss Hardwick,
boys. No.
You will be held in contempt of this court if you become disruptive.
I don't care. I haven't done anything to this court. I haven't done anything to him.
She will be arrested for contempt of
It doesn't
court.
make any difference.
You will serve 10 days for contempt of court.
She was arrested for contempt and sentenced to 10 days in jail. This is when things got crazy.
Go now.
Melissa leapfrogged towards the judge, but thankfully, court deputies stopped her just in time. However, that did not stop her verbal threats. Melissa faced
Melissa Hardwick's outburst hits like a gut punch. You hear her desperation, her anger boiling over, but attacking the judge. That's a line crossed. Domestic violence cases carry so much emotional weight, pain on all sides. Her contempt. Sentence feels fair, but her leap screams deeper issues. It's hard not to wonder what pushed her to this edge. The courtroom isn't just a place for justice. It's where human fragility explodes.
Like in the case of 30-year-old Bass Webb, who's in court on attempted murder charges. CCTV footage outside a Kentucky jail showed Webb, a former inmate who spent 3 months there on assault charges, intentionally hitting 2 prison workers with his car. While one guy managed to dodge it, the other was not so lucky. Webb was arrested and produced in court before Judge Vanessa Dixon. Since she knew the 2 jail employees beforehand, Judge Dixon decided to recuse herself from the case. But what Webb did next shocked the whole courtroom. Webb literally spat on Judge Dixon, clearly taking her by surprise. After initially dismissing him, Judge Dixon brought Webb back, charged him, and threw him out of the courtroom. During this time, new evidence came up linking Webb to the unsolved murder of his ex-girlfriend, Bria Runewitz. While incarcerated, Webb had bragged to a detective about murdering the 32-year-old. To escape the death penalty, Webb pleaded guilty and got an additional 50 years in prison. Now, if that wasn't enough, 5 years later, another cold case came to haunt Webb. This time, he was charged with the murder of another ex-girlfriend, Sabrina Vaughn. This time, Webb appeared in court with a sinister tattoo on his head. It had a murder hit list of all the people he intended to kill, including all judges, all prosecutors, all cops, the media, 3 rats that had been crossed out, and many more. Webb was convicted and sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole.
Base Webb's story is terrifying. Spitting on a judge, rioting, a tattooed hit list, it's like he's daring the system to stop him. His crimes pile up from assault to murder, and that tattoo chills me to the core. It's not just defiance. It's a glimpse into a mind that sees no boundaries. How do you rehabilitate someone this far gone? The law's response feels right, but it leaves you questioning if justice can ever fully address such darkness.
Like in the case of Christopher Teal, who was in the King County courtroom facing sexual assault charges in Seattle, Washington. Reports suggest that Teal, a homeless man, followed a woman inside a restroom at a Volkswagen dealership and assaulted her. He was arrested after company employees barged in and stopped the attack. Teal was charged with first-degree sexual assault and unlawful imprisonment. He appeared in court for a competency hearing represented by his lawyer, Reed Birkland. As the hearing began, Teal seemed amused and raised his arm towards Birkland before being stopped by a court officer.
Mr. Teal's present, he's in custody, he's represented by counsel, Mr. Birkland.
Then suddenly, without provocation, Teal snapped.
Standing from his counsel, who I'll defer to in a moment, that they are now stipulating that Mr.
Out of nowhere, Teal punched his own lawyer. Luckily, the police quickly managed to subdue him. A spit hood was placed over his head, and Teal was removed.
Christopher Teal's punch came out of nowhere, didn't it? One second he's smirking, the next he's lashing out at his own lawyer. It's a stark reminder of how unpredictable these cases can be. His charge is sexual assault, unlawful imprisonments. Heavy. And this outburst only deepens the tragedy. You can't help but feel for the victims, the lawyer, even the courtroom staff. Moments like this make you wonder, where's the line between mental health issues and accountability?
Like in the case of Sidney Newsom, who is facing a domestic violence charge in Pike County Justice Court in Mississippi. Southern District Judge Aubrey Rimes was presiding over the hearing. Newsom initially seemed to be in a good mood as he reviewed some papers. But an altercation with a court officer seemed to agitate him. Newsom was then asked to sign some papers. Which the officer presented to Judge Rimes. However, Newsom was not ready to rest his case. He furiously argued with Judge Rimes, who promptly asked the officer to remove him from the court. As he was being led from the courtroom, Newsom lost it. First, he grabbed a stack of papers and threw it at Judge Rimes. The officer tried to subdue him, but Newsom managed to overpower her. He then threw a telephone at the judge. This is when the judge decided to take matters into his own hands. As Newsom threw more paper at him, Judge Rimes single-handedly pinned him to the table. Eventually, backup arrived. Newsom was restrained and taken from Stuart Berry, who was facing robbery charges in Mississippi. Reports suggest that 21-year-old Daniel allegedly robbed a store where he leapt over the counter, put a female clerk in a headlock, and grabbed $20 from the open cash register. Daniel, a business major student, was arrested and charged with 1 count of strong-armed robbery. But when Daniel was being taken to court, he totally lost it. Daniel cursed and headbutted a sheriff's deputy, breaking his nose. He was quickly carried off and detained. The sheriff said Daniel was under the influence of drugs and had also assaulted a jail worker the previous night.
I don't know what this is or how much he's taken or whatever, but we'll have to get him evaluated by a doctor, but we've got to determine a safe way to do it for the doctor and for him and for us.
Daniel Berry's headbutt on that deputy, it's raw, ugly chaos. A young business student, yet here he is, lost to drugs and violence. The broken nose, the jail worker assaults, it's a spiral that's hard to watch. You feel for the deputy. Just doing his job, and Berry, trapped in his own destruction. Justice moves forward, but it's a grim reminder, sometimes. The courtroom reveals more about human struggle than it resolves. What's next for someone this far gone?